You could say that 1997 was a pretty good year for Boards of Canada. Their first official release, High Scores, sold pretty well and got some pretty good critical reception, and it still does to this day. They also went on their first tour with Awetecker that year, including the Phoenix Festival that also had David Bowie and Jamiroquai in there. It was during this tour when Awetecker told about their record label that they had signed to, called Warp. Oh, what's that? You never heard of Warp? Well, let me introduce you to this motherfucker. This is Richard D. James, also known as Aphex Twin, also known as AFX, also known as Polygon Window, and all these other names that I will plaster on the screen. Now, if you're a fan of electronic music and don't know who Aphex Twin is, how? This guy is literally the biggest influence in electronic music history. Without him, we wouldn't have Square Pusher, Arca, Daft Punk, and these two guys. And also, the brothers. They really liked his work, especially the selected Ambiworks albums, which the influence can really be seen on their old stuff. Awetecker once even introduced them to Warp one day, and they got really interested. And then, one day, in 1998, Warp signed Boards of Canada on their label. But earlier before the deal, the duo would put out one single under Scam before the signing called Aquarius. We will talk about this track later on in this video, but we can talk about the B-side. Now, this B-side isn't all that great in my opinion. I feel like there's too much that's going on in this track, but I still like it. The title, Chinook, could refer to many different things. For one, it could refer to a weather phenomenon called Chinook winds that only happens in Calgary, Canada, which is a city in Alberta where the brothers grew up. It could also refer to the Chinookan peoples of Oregon, which is a Native American tribe. It could also refer to the helicopter, the Boeing CH-47 Chinook. And finally, it could refer to a famous checkers playing computer program, which was the first to win a world championship and was, coincidentally, developed at the University of Alberta. Also, this reverse sound that you hear in the percussion loop, that's believed to be made from a fishing reel casting a line. Pretty cool. But anyways, back to Warp. When Awetecker talked to Warp about Boards of Canada for the first time, they showed him the Bach Maxima tape. And just like Awetecker, they absolutely loved it. So, one day, Warp basically said to them, "Hey, make an album for us that has some of these songs, and maybe some new songs that you created." Okay. And so, on April 20th, 1998, Boards of Canada released possibly the most game-changing electronic music album of all time, under Scam and Warp, called Music Has the Right to Children. God, where do I even begin with this album? This is possibly the greatest electronic music release ever, along with Daft Punk's Discovery and Aphex Twin's selected Ambiworks 8592. I'm just gonna keep it simple as that. But anyways, let's dive into this album, starting off with... The title of this album is a reference to an old 80s textbook called Children Have the Right to Music. That's it. The album cover is a filtered family photo that was taken at a lookout on Mount Norquay Road in Alberta, Canada. Also, no one knows who this family is or where the original photo comes from. Before we get into the video, I would like to give some shoutouts to some people who mostly inspired me to make this video and the series. Shouts out to Seasong, Smags, Bleeps and Boops, Blue Shades, and the two main ones, Album Affairs and Ixie Music. I would definitely recommend checking out all these vids, but mostly these two. Ixie going on a more music theory deep dive, while Album Affairs talks about how important this album is to electronic music. So if you're interested in these videos, go watch. Oh yeah, by the way, Album Affairs, thank you for commenting on my video. It was really nice to see you there. Anyways, let's get into this game-changing album, starting off with... probably one of the most stunning intros to an album ever. As you may know, the name Boards of Canada comes from the film company National Film Board of Canada, which were a big influence on them musically in their early days and nowadays as well. This is also the reason why this song sounds like this due to the nature documentary feel to it. Throughout this song, the last 4 seconds of the theme from Sesame Street's Alpha Quest is slowed down by exactly 15.86 semitones and is looped. Very specific, I know. Oh yeah, by the way, here's a fun game. Every time that I mention Sesame Street in this video, take a drink. Anyways, on to the next track. Already, we're getting into what I think is the most eerie track on this album. What's really interesting about this track is that the percussion that you hear is actually cut up samples of Mike Sanderson's girlfriend talking. Pretty neat. There's also a ton of samples in this track. Between these timestamps, you can hear some dialogue that comes from the documentary on the tracks of the wild otter.
The holes are nearly always close to the sea, in fallen boulders, old ruins, in cliffs, or at the top of a stack like this, high above the sea. A safe place for cubs. I wait, tense, then disappointed. She leaves her spraint to notify others of a visit. The holts are evenly spaced, about 500 yards apart, and are for the use of any otter who passes by, with or without cubs.
And at the exact same time where the dialogue ends, you can hear the words, "I love you." I'll talk about that sample in the next song because the sample is actually used fully, so wait a moment. You can also hear some 70s disco funk sample that repeats a lot and sometimes changes dialogue between these timestamps, along with record scratching. What you're seeing on the screen right now is the exact sample that's used in the song. It's an old Sesame Street vignette of a kid trying to spell out, "I love you." It's simple as that. This track was also used on the A Few Old Tunes tape, but had a different name, which was just simply, "I love you." Apparently, this track was a reference to a friend's first time taking psychedelic mushrooms, which I can see a lot. Okay, Telephasic Workshop is the first out of a couple that I will talk about for a really long time, so brace yourself. The title could mean many different things, first of all. It could refer to a telephase, which is part of a cell division or the idea of a biological workshop. Or it could refer to the Children's Television Workshop, which is the company that makes Sesame Street. Or it could refer to the BBC's Radiophonic Workshop, where different sound effects and music is recorded for TV and radio programs. Or it could be a reference to Blue Oyster Cult's Workshop of Telescopes compilation album. Also, the band has joked about being the same band, and they also have the same initials as well. But I think the final reason makes most sense. The word telephasic can be separated into two words. Tele means of the mind, and phasic means synchronized. Synchronized mind. And the meaning behind a telephasic workshop could be a meditative environment in which two or more individuals attempt to share a telephatic vision or idea. But enough with the title, let's get into the samples. Throughout almost the entirety of the track, a chopped voice could be heard either saying ritual or twist. To me, I think the voice says twist, but I can hear ritual as well. At the 4 minutes and 1 second mark, and almost throughout the rest of the track, you can hear someone with a Scottish accent saying, "You're no gonna." "You're no gonna" is Scottish slang for "you aren't going to," by the way. At the 4 minute and 28 seconds mark, and almost throughout the rest of the track, you can hear someone saying 20 cent. There's other people who think that it's something different, like "come this way" or "somebody say." At these timestamps, you can hear someone saying "a very personal moment." And at these timestamps, you can hear a deep voice saying, which is obviously referring to the duo's name. Whew, that was a lot to talk about. Anyways, on to the next track. Triangles and rhombuses is a cool little interlude. That's nice. This track also has a hidden track called It's Too Orangey, which I talked about in my tourism video, and if you haven't seen it, go do that. Also, keep in mind that if you place a triangle and a rhombus adjacent to each other, you get a 5-sided polygon, known as a pentagon, which makes this significant that this is track 5. And this trend follows into the next track. Now, even though this is my least favorite from the album, it's still a really good track. I just don't enjoy it as much as the others though. The name 6010 is just referring to 70 or 60 plus 10, which could be referring to the band's label, Music 70. This song samples 2 Earth, Wind & Fire songs, which are Get Away and On Your Face. It also samples the Many Me's Sesame Street vignette that we talked about last video, which, if you haven't already, go check it out. There's also another hidden track in the song called Blueberry that I also talked about in my tourism video, and if you haven't already, go check it out. What the fuck are you doing here? But anyways, on to the next track. Okay, this is another one that I'm going to talk about for a long time, so again, brace yourself. First off, let's talk about the importance of the turquoise hexagon sun in BOC culture. It is their logo/symbol, first of all. Most people say that this is the logo that they associate with the most, but for me, this is the first thing that I think of when I hear BOC or Boards of Canada. It's also the name of the studio that they record at, and has a bunch of collectives that work with Boards of Canada called Hexagon Sun. Marcus even spoke about why they liked hexagons so much. The hexagon theme represents that whole idea of being able to see reality for what it is, the raw maths or patterns that make everything. We've always been interested in science and maths. Sometimes music or art or drugs can pull back the curtain for you and reveal the Wizard of Oz, so to speak, busy pushing the levers and pressing buttons. That's what maths is, the wizard. It sounds like nonsense, but I'm sure a lot of people know what I'm talking about. I don't. Now let's get into the actual song itself. The title, Turquoise Hexagon Sun, could refer to the subject of lens flares. The number of blades making up the aperture of the lens influences the shape of the lens flare produced, so that a 6-bladed aperture, for example, would make a hexagonal sun flare effect. It could also refer to the hexagon sun that is on top of Saturn, which looks cool and sometimes changes color throughout the years. The origin of the samples that are in this track are actually pretty cool. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's bits of speech that appear throughout this track that were recorded at live shows and at their studio. I would also like to mention that there is a track called Orange Hexagon Sun that is on Old Tunes Volume 2. This track has the same drum beat as Turquoise Hexagon Sun, but has a different melody. It's a great song. Check it out. Anyways, on to the next track. Kaini Industries is one of my favorite interludes that they have done. The bass pattern is sick, and the little flute and drum at the end is nice as well. And if you listen closely to the beginning of my first and second video, I put Kaini Industries as the background music. The name Kaini Industries comes from a company that was set up in Canada to create employment for a settlement of Cree Indians. The sample that is used at the end is unknown, but the closest we found to the original is from the album Music of the Javaro of Ecuador. Bocuma's a pretty nice track. That's all I have to say. I don't really have an opinion on this. Bocuma was originally the title track on Bach Maxima, but was renamed on Music Has the Right to Children. The name bocuma is a mix-up of 2 words, Bach Maxima and documa. Documa is a reference to 80s video culture, according to the band. Cool, I guess? But then, this cool interlude transitions into... Ah yes, roygbiv. the Boards of Canada song that everyone knows. The song that mostly encapsulates Boards of Canada as a whole. This is the Boards of Canada song. It is easily a top 5 BOC track in my opinion. I even created a poster for this song for an assignment in school. But anyways, let's get into this track. Obviously, the title, roygbiv, is an acronym for all the colors in the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. This song has 2 samples, both from the same source, which is, again, a Sesame Street vignette about the word lake. This song has also been used in a lot of commercials for a Chilean college called Santo Tomas. It has been obsessively used from 2008 to present day still. There's also a remix of the song done by them called the Alpha Quest mix, which was specifically used for one of their friends' student films and was leaked in the early 2000s by the internet. It's even longer than the original, lasting 6 minutes, and it has a full version of bocuma along with it. Oh yeah, and it also has another sample from the theme of Alpha Quest. And of course, we can't talk about the song without mentioning the music video by Barry Rydell. This is probably the most iconic video in the fan-made music video community, along with No Name Number 5's video for Everything You Do Is a Balloon. I don't know how, but a video from 2006 that was made on Windows Movie Maker somehow brings a great 80s vibe to it. I've probably watched this video about a dozen times, and this child is engraved in my brain for some reason. Alright, on to the next track. Rule the Whirl is another great song, and possibly one of BOC's best. The title, Rule the Whirl, is often said to be an interpretation of a child saying, "Rule the world," which is honestly what I thought when I first heard this. In this track, you can actually hear birds singing in the background. They actually talked about this in an interview with Virgin Magazine. Very fitting, am I right? What happened was that I was listening to the track, and oddly, I could hear birds singing. Then, I realized that the window was open in the studio, and since the bird song went so well with the music, we recorded it to capture the feel of what we experienced listening with the window open. This song was also featured in a 2007 car commercial for Mercedes-Benz.
It starts with a picture. The mind's eye. Get the big ideas on the table. Agility.
Serenity. That's the challenge. Let's do it.
We evolve. I can see it.
I'll see your idea and raise it.
That's how real design works.
Well, at least it's not weird, unlike whatever the hell this was. Another classic that every BOC fan knows, and another one where I'm going to talk about this for a long time. Aquarius is the song that has the most appearances in their discography. The single, Music Has the Right to Children, the Peel Session, and a live bootleg from 1999. The title, Aquarius, is probably named after the main sample that they used throughout the song, which is the song Aquarius from the Hair soundtrack. Or it could have been a reference from an interview with electronic music legend Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, where he talks about a time period called Aquarius, which is basically the future of music almost. Or it could just be a reference to the astrology sign. We may never know. Alright, let's talk about this sample. This is a sample from, yet again, an old Sesame Street vignette about the letter O. This sample has been known as a joke with BOC fans for a long period of time. If you even mention the color orange in anything, BOC fans, like me, will go fucking ballistics. Another sample that BOC fans joke about is... This is another sample of, yet again, an old Sesame Street vignette of kids trying to match a man's outfit, slot machine style.
No, try another one. Yeah, that's right.
The last sample people know from the song is... This is from, can you guess? Fucking Sesame Street from Alpha Quest about the letter S.
We'll sail into the stars. S.
Alright, now this is gonna get dark. Let's talk about the counting. In this track, a female voice can be heard counting from 1 to 36, and then completely messing up and saying random numbers. It even says 6010 as one of the numbers. God, don't you learn how to count? But what if I told you that this may be all intentional? Because if you solve the sum of each number from 1 to 36, you get 666. 666 is known as the number of the beast in the Bible, which the beast is obviously referring to the big red man from hell. But you want to know something crazier? The most important number out of all of these is the number 23. It is the number that is at the end of every counting sequence, except for the single version. If you split the numbers in 23 and multiply them, you get 6. And when you square 6, you get 36, the last number that the woman counts correctly. The number 23 is a prominent theme in the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Anton Wilson. In the Peel Session version of Aquarius, the number 23 is repeated 5 times, and another major theme in the trilogy is the law of fives. Pretty crazy. They even said that the trilogy was an inspiration to their music. It was even used in the soundtrack of Maybe Logic, a movie about Robert Anton Wilson. Okay, now let's get depressed. Ah yes, Olson, the track that gives you both hope and depression at the same time. This isn't the most popular Boards of Canada track, but it's the one that most people recognize. The duo said in an interview that the title is the surname of a family that they know of, but we don't know who this family is. Or it could be a reference to a CIA scientist named Frank Olson, who, in 1953, killed himself after he was given LSD and jumped off from a 10th-story window. However, we do not know if he was actually murdered or committed suicide. It's still an ongoing mystery. But anyways, on to the next track. Pete Standing Alone is a track that didn't grow on me first, but I gave it a couple listens. It's good. Now, I probably know what you're thinking. Damn, Pete needs some friends or something. Well, the title is the name of a real person. Yes, this person's full name is Pete Standing Alone. He was a Albertan First Nations man who was the subject of a National Film Board of Canada film called Standing Alone. And this song actually samples the documentary, according to Bach Pages. I couldn't find the part that was resemblant to the sample, but here's the closest that I found.
But I was asking you, did you find any bones of human?
By the way, there's this cool orchestral version that I found that was done by the London Sinfonietta Orchestra, so go check it out if you can. But anyways, next track. Smoke's Quantity, just like 6010, is good, but it doesn't affect me like the others. Smoke's Quantity is actually a track off Twoism, but I did not talk about that in the Twoism video due to the importance of it being on this album. The title, Smoke's Quantity, was explained by the duo as a nickname of a friend of ours. What a weird nickname to give a friend, honestly. Jesus Christ, this song is beautiful. This is basically if Olson was extended and was more depressed. Open the Light could be a reference to the Manglish language, which was a mix of Mandarin and English. How this language works is that people tend to translate phrases directly from their first languages into English, and turn on the light in Manglish could be phrased as open the light. There's also a small sample from, you guessed it, an old Sesame Street vignette about the Inuit.
And then we fish.
Now that the show is over and we have jointly exercised our constitutional rights, we would like to leave you with one very important thought. Sometime in the future, you may have the opportunity to serve as a juror in a censorship case or a so-called obscenity case. It would be wise to remember that the same people would stop you from listening to Boards of Canada may be back next year to complain about a book or even a TV program. If you could be told what you can see or read, then it follows that you can be told what to say or think. Defend your constitutionally protected rights. No one else will do it for you. Thank you.
Ha! You thought this was over. Bonus track time! Happy Cycling is the bonus track that appeared on the 2004 re-release of this album and on any streaming platform, which kinda makes one very important thought useless. The title, Happy Cycling, could be a reference to an electronic music company called Cycling 74, who made a music software called Max. By the way, there is a shorter and more different version of Happy Cycling that appears on the A Few Old Tunes tape. There's also a ton of samples that were used in this track. The bass drum beat and dissonant note that is heard throughout the song is sampled from Pink Floyd's Heartbeat Pygmy. An eerie choir can be heard throughout the track as well, which comes from the Jesus Christ Superstar movie. Oh yeah, you can also hear a fucking seagull. Also, fun fact, this track is actually the most played song in their life history, with a grand total of 4 times. Yeah, these guys rarely ever play live, so that's why it's only 4 times, I guess. But anyways, that is the conclusion of this very long deep dive on this album. I hope y'all enjoyed this vid, and I hope to see y'all in the next part of this series, where we will talk about how a cult changed Boards of Canada's sound. So see you guys later. Bye-bye.